We're gathered this morning to pay Kavod Achron, give respect and dignity to Florence Fraydie Matkowsky, Fraydie Bat Yosef Shmuel. I'll recite some words from Tanakh, both from Tehillim and Mishlei, as is our minhag, and then we'll hear various hespedim. Aside from those who are here in person today, of course, there are many in Eretz Yisrael who are, before Shabbos, participating with us virtually. Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, binot deshe yar bitzein yamei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yishovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeit sal mavet lo irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umish'antecha hema yinachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai, dishanta v'Hashem roshi kotzi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yudefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavtu veit Adonai le'orech yamim. It's our minhag whenever there is a levaya, especially for an Isha Kshera, which Fraydie was, to recite the words from the first hesped ever delivered in Jewish history, as far as the Medrash Tanchuma is concerned, in Parshat Chayisara, the words spoken by Avram Avinu for Sarah Imenu. And so we echo those words today. We're paying our respects and laying to rest a matriarch not only of this family, but of our congregational family, since Fraydie and Bernie were min hamiyasdim, among the founders of our shul, pillars of our shul. And so we recite the words of Eshet Chayil, and everyone should have in mind when you're hearing them that tonight on Shabbos, when you're singing the words of Eshet Chayil on Shabbos, to think a little bit about the legacy of this grand person who we were zochim to know. Eshet Chayil miyimtza v'rachok mipninim michra, patach ba lev ba'ala v'shala lo yechsar, Malatu tov v'lo ra kol yemei chayeha, darshat semru fishtim v'taz b'chefetz kapeha, hayita koniot socher mimerchak tavi lachma, v'takom be'od laila v'titen teref leveita v'chok l'naroteha, zamama sadeh v'tikachehu mipri chapea nata karem, chogra ve'oz motneha v'te'ametz zroteha, ta'ama ki tov sachra, lo yichbe v'laila neira, Yadeha shilcha v'kishor v'chapea tamchufa lech, kapa parsa le'ani v'yadea shilcha la'evyon, lo tira leveita mishaleg, ki chol beita lavush shanim, marvadi mastala sheish v'argaman levusha, noda ba'she'arim ba'ala b'shifto im ziknei aretz, sadin asita v'timkor, v'chagor natna laknaani, oz v'hadar levusha, v'tischak liyom acharon, pi hapotcha v'chochma, v'torat chesed al lishona, tzofia halichot beita, v'lechem atzlut lo tochel, kamu vanea v'yashrua, ba'ala v'yehalila, rabot banot asu chayil, v'at alit al kulana, sheker hachen v'hevel hayofi, isha yirat Adonai hitit halal, tenula mipri yadeha, v'halelua v'ashearim ma'aseha. Continuing with words of Hesp and Mila de Hespeda, we'll hear from 5 individuals who will speak about Fraydie this morning. First from beloved brother, Hal ben Chaim, Rabbi Yitzchak Noble, and then from dear friend, Yudis Greenfield, and then Devorah, Dan, and David. So ask each of you to come up, please, at this time.
Fraydie, I'm reminded of the words that Aaron said to Moshe Rabbeinu and Miriam had Saraz, and he said, Al nosihi kames, let our sister not be like someone who passed away. Asher b'tzeiso merechem imo, we come from the same mother. Vayeochel chatzi b'soro. It's like half of me is torn away. That's how I feel today. A piece of me has been torn away. such a wonderful sister. The Chovos Halevavos says, we know life is a Sefer HaChaim. At the Beis Elam, you say the same Kaddish you say by a Siyam on a Sefer. It's a Sefer HaChaim. Every day in life is a page in the Sefer. Write, inscribe in that page what you would like to be remembered about you. And Fraydie wrote a beautiful Sefer HaChaim. She was very bright and, of course, very imbued with great talent. I remember at the age of 3 or so, she went over to a piano and started playing by ear. But my mother, Leah Sholem, seeing that wonderful talent, invested in polishing it, polishing that beautiful gem. And we know that over the years, Fraydie brought so much joy and pleasure to young and old, and she shared it so graciously, and she taught others. She was always a giving person. And as talented and as bright as she was, never any airs about herself. No such thing. You have it, you were given it, it's a God's gift, and you use it properly. She told me once about the chesed. Her beloved Bernie Alav Shalom, in his professional capacity, had occasion to travel to the Soviet Union and met with many Jewish professionals, many of whom didn't have access to basic necessities. And as she put it, in the untranslated Jewish world, they schlepped suitcases full of necessities for those scientists. Now, it was not easy, but that was their obligation. That was the chesed they did. And they hosted many sdorim for these people. They gave chiyas, they brought life to these people. But the Chazal tell us the person is the midos. That's the person. Chaim Vital explains that a person is the midos, and to him we're given the mitzvahs. That's the measure. And the Rav mentioned the Eshes Chayil, but another pasuk in Mishlei, Drocheha Darchei Noam, what they sing before, put away the Sefer Torah. The ways of Torah are pleasant. That is, and Fraydie was pleasant. She had the epitome of what we call social skills, knowing how to speak to everybody in a way that made them feel good about themselves and feel that she appreciated them. To make a person feel, especially you're in the company of someone so talented and so bright, you can get a feeling, no, you don't feel down a little bit. She brought out the best feelings in everybody. And that was something that was amazing about her. The second half of the pasuk says, and all the ways of Torah are peace. When you have such wonderful midos, you could be at peace with everybody. There's no conflict, nothing. I'm not jealous of you, people are not, and you're not jealous of me. And all I inspire, Chazal say, Kamayim ponim on the pasuk, Kamayim ponim la ponim, Ken leiv ha'odam la'odam. As one looks in the water, he sees his own reflection. If a person has within his heart love for someone else, it brings out in that person a love the other way. And that's how she elevated people and brought out such love and peace and shalom. Because I'll say that the Geula will come when Klal Yisrael are at peace. We know we have terrible enemies, but the peace has to begin from within. And sometimes it's the hardest in families and friends, associates, but she was a perfect example of the kind of midas that bring shalom to the world. In Mishlei, the Rav said, Komu baneha vayashruha. Her children arose and they said praise. They said, great things about her. As we enter talking about her Sefer HaChaim, her book of life, the final chapter, painful but glorious. You saw the wonderful chinuch that she imbued in her children as they cared for her in such a dedicated and devoted way. David and Lisa, Dan and Andy, Dvorah, and the children, it was amazing. They were true malachei rachamim. They were true angels of mercy. I have no less word to say. They were true, but that doesn't come. That comes from a chinuch, that they saw that from her, that kind of feeling. Chazal say that a great madrega is makabel yisurim ba'ava, to accept difficulties and pain and affliction that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends with love, knowing that Hashem is the loving Father. It's like a parent has to give. We don't know. We're on this world. We don't know from heaven what's doing, but we know we have a loving Father. Fraydie, and that level was mind-boggling. I couldn't stop telling people as I was dealing with her in the last painful chapter of her Makabel Yisurim Ba'ava, with love to Hashem. Whatever Hashem gave me, this is what it is. Whatever my years are, I'm grateful for what He gave me. Under such conditions, it was mind-boggling. It's a madrega that's spoken about great, great tzaddikim. We begin the morning with Moida Ani Lefanecha. I thank you, Hashem. And then we say the bracha l'kai neshama. Kol zman shanshama b'kirbi. As long as my neshama is within me, Moida Ani Lefanecha. Fraydie lived that. Kol zman shanshama b'kirba. She didn't stop saying thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and expressed it. And so she leaves a beautiful Sefer HaChaim, one for the children, from all of us to emulate her example. Fraydie will never forget you.
Lovely lady, wonderful person, warm, generous, kind, always had a sweet smile, talented and learned. She was always pleasant, sunny, friendly, cheery, a real lady. These are the descriptions I received yesterday from numerous people describing my beloved friend Fraydie. The Matkowsky and Greenfield families moved to Skokie the summer of 1977. We wound up living about a block away from each other, and it wasn't long before we became fast friends. I don't remember how it all started, maybe because we were both daughters of an Esther Gittel, or because we were both married to boys from the Bronx who liked smoking cigars. We spent many memorable times together, driving home from Great America with terrified kids in the car during a thunderstorm with hail pounding down on the roof, our tradition of sitting on a park bench at Timber Ridge School on the way home from Kol Nidre, walking to Tashlich while Bernie and Cy smoked their cigars, and Fraydie and I kept changing position to get away from the smoke, having first day of Rosh Hashanah lunch at our house until COVID ended that tradition, having Sukkot meals in the Fraydie-designed sukkah, and looking forward to the best treat of all, Iraqi stew. Spending a weekend together at Lake Geneva, evening walks through Timber Ridge with Bernie and Fraydie while Bernie puffed on his cigar, and Fraydie and I kept changing position to get away from the smoke. Vacationing, just the four of us in Holland, Michigan, many wonderful Seders celebrated together, and on and on. Fraydie was an incredible Eshet Chayil. She took excellent care of Bernie, and he praised her with his best compliment, Fraydie, you did good. Fraydie was a fantastic cook and hostess. I learned so much about entertaining company from watching how she put everything together. She had a real knack for making a lovely presentation. We could shop together and give each other advice. She had great style and knew how to put an outfit together and look beautiful, just like she knew how to put a table together and make it look so inviting. And she would come to shul with glorious hats held in place with a huge hat pin. We spent time in Florida going to every lighting store looking for the perfect fixture for the dining room. I learned how to appreciate the resale and antique shops, looking for pieces that might fit into the Florida condo. Fraydie was a friend who asked an opinion and never ridiculed the answer, but took you seriously. She would explain her reason for doing or not doing something, liking or not something. We would talk about many things, but we did not gossip. She was loved by many people, and it was easy to understand why. In the years we knew each other, we never had an argument or a fight. Fraydie wrote many songs for parties, for our shul dinners, for school. So many of our children benefited from the amazing experience of being in Fraydie's Hillel Torah choir, and she is dearly loved by her former students. She was always available to play piano for school events or her guitar for our kumzits. Music is and was a Matkowsky specialty. For years, Fraydie was part of our Monday night Tehillim group. She worked hard getting us to start our chanting on the right note and keeping us from dropping our voices octaves lower. We got a glimpse of what it must have been like to be under her direction, like the choir participants were. She demanded excellence in all things and achieved great results, but not with our Tehillim group. This past summer and fall, I had the zechus of frequently having Fraydie at my Shabbat table. She did what she had done for years. She sang Zemiros and taught my grandsons one of her favorites. She even gave a Devar Torah at one of our last meals together, which reminded me of the times she made Sudat Shlishit at her house in memory of her mother and gave beautiful Divrei Torah followed by a sumptuous spread to feast on afterwards. Fraydie was always there for me when I needed her. For years, we sat together in shul on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur with my mother and Bobby Matkowsky. The Chagim are not the same now. COVID and illness changed so much. In some ways, these last years brought Fraydie and me even closer together. She was so optimistic and hopeful during her illness, but she accepted it all with grace and kept herself busy planning the renovations for her new condo. Fraydie left a beautiful legacy through exceptional children and grandchildren, through her music, her teaching, her love of Yiddishkeit, through all the people whose lives she touched. I will miss my friend for the rest of my life. Rabbi Harvey Well wrote that Fraydie enriched the world with her music, and he said, I can see her now leading God's angels in song. May she be a Melit Yosher for her beloved family and all Kalal Yisrael.
If you'd seen a picture of my mom around age 6, and it's no accident that you haven't, you'd know that the soon-to-be beauty was about twice the size of the other kids. Her immigrant mother, my beloved Babi Noble, Aleha Hashalom, was still so close to the food insecurity that she had experienced as a young woman in Poland, that she would nervously feed her baby girl Fraydie as much as she possibly could. Understandable for a mother who had experienced poverty, anti-Semitism, and fear for her life prior to her move to the States. And during that time, Babi would tell Mom Yiddish stories of her family back in Poland, of a place in the old country that her family had moved earlier, Denver, Colorado. Mom only later found out that Babi was talking about her family's first arrival here in the Golden Medina to Denver, the city I now call home. By that time, Mom, the musical prodigy, was entertaining everyone with her beautiful piano playing. She had natural talent and charm and could have been a star, though she never needed that, because Mom also had a serious and humble behind-the-scenes work ethic from parents who were actively working to create and develop Jewish life and education in America. Mom's father, my Zaidi, Alav HaShalom, had signed his name to sponsor many Jews as they fled Europe for America prior to World War II, family and stranger alike. And then he took on his back to support not just his own family, but much extended family as they came to this country. And with his humility, we didn't even know the extent of it, because it never occurred to him not to quietly do everything he could every day to serve Hashem and his family and his community through hard work and without wanting recognition. Sometimes in recent years, when I've given my mom a foot massage, she would tell me how she used to rub her dad's feet after he had worked a really hard day. And I felt that same hard work as she used her feet, her actions, to bring about what she wanted to see in the world. As we set up the Facebook page for Mom's students and friends to share, I told her, "It seems like you've seen yourself as secondary to Dad's legacy. You're a part of his, to be sure, with the beautiful life you built together for 55 years. But you should know what an additional legacy you yourself have, that you are beloved and have made an impact on so many people." She said, "Oh, stop, you're going to give me a big head." Those of us who had Mrs. Strimling, Aleha HaShalom, for math in high school, fondly remember the annual reading of the dot and the line on the first day of spring, a day that was also fittingly Mom's birthday. Indeed, if my dad was the dot, so precise as to have switched from engineering to applied mathematics after his first master's, because engineering was too fuzzy for the exploration of his mind, Mom had been the line, not a wild squiggle, but a masterpiece swirling around him, creating beauty wherever they found themselves, and creating a home in that beauty for the family. Mom loved to remind me how much she wanted a daughter and how she waited for me for so long. She decorated my room with flowery drapes, creating what she would have wanted as a young girl who grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where trains lulled her to sleep at night and grass and trees were only in Central Park. Mom got me my first manicure for my cousin Devorah's wedding. She did my first makeup for my role as Blueberry Muffin in my ice skating show at the Stadium. And as I got a little older, we'd enjoy shopping together. Dan would good-naturedly tease us over our excitement about Clinique bonus time. But really, we'd buy Bubby Ita a bottle of the moisturizer she liked, get some freebies for ourselves, and mostly enjoy the bonus time that we got to spend together. Mom's humility extended to hard times. When she had her first bout with cancer at age 50, she said, "Many people say, why me? But I think, why not me? It happens. No reason it shouldn't be me. It's fine." Her biggest request back then was that we not tell anyone, because she didn't want anyone to treat her differently or worry about her. Said the woman who would think she had horribly undercooked for company if one dish ran out on Shabbat when people had only had seconds and not thirds. Mom treated everyone around her with kindness and respect, and she wanted more for her family and for her community. She wanted to share a level of beauty she saw that showed her Hashem's work in this world. So when she saw an opportunity to share music with the Hillel Torah students, she did it. And as she saw that we weren't taking field trips to the world-class museums in Chicago, she set them up herself. A few times as a child, I was sitting bored in class, perhaps worried because I hadn't finished my homework. Mom popped her head in and said, "Excuse me, I need to take Devorah out of class. She's coming with me and the fifth graders to the Art Institute today, or she's coming with me and the choir to perform for a nursing home." While she didn't want me to miss school more than that, she didn't want me to miss the chance to see something special and inspirational or to take part in a chesed for the elderly. I was able to travel with my parents as well. One particularly special trip in 1987 saw me, my parents, and Bubby Ita in Paris together. I'll always be grateful for Mom's focus on sharing the world's beauty with me while creating a warm environment in which I could safely explore it. Of course, more than anything, this applies to Israel. When baby me showed up in Israel for the summers, thanks to Dad's consulting at Israeli universities, Mom's willingness to pack up and create a comfy little home on a basic Israeli university campus that was then much less ostensibly comfortable than life in the States, it made an indelible impression on me. I learned to swim there, and I moved about with confidence. After October 7th, I, like all of us, was full of anxiety and confusion among many emotions, and I started therapy. My therapist asked me to think of places and memories where I felt totally safe and happy and experience those places using all my senses. The first and strongest memory that came to mind, to the surprise of my therapist, was the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot in 1980. It was my second time there. I was 5. There was a little girl there about my age. She was European and the daughter of another scientist. The two of us sat together. Our only common language was Hebrew. We struggled to communicate, but we tried and we felt like friends. And Mom was able to give me the freedom at 5 to walk around the grounds of Weitzman by myself. I can remember the smell of the trees, the buildings around us, and the feeling of pride that this girl and I had as we stumbled our way around a conversation in Hebrew. My parents taking me there, trusting my safety and the connections made early, created the most wonderful feeling of home that even in times of terror, I can now imagine. Mom created that home for me that I now carry in my heart. I had the schus to take care of Mom briefly in December. Even then, it was hard to get her to accept my help. She didn't think I'd want to do some of the less pleasant tasks that a post-surgery patient might need, as if she hadn't done all of that for me and more when I was young. As I was leaving her home, she asked me to get the necklace hanging from her mirror. It was a simple gold necklace that I had had made for her in Yerushalayim in the early 90s. It said, Ima, at alit al kulana, from the Eshet Chayil we sing on Friday nights and that we just said here today. Mom wore it regularly and she loved it. Then it disappeared for a while, as things sometimes do. When it finally reappeared, she was overjoyed to tell me. I was surprised at her level of excitement. She then wore it every single day for many years until very recently. She loved when people would ask her what it meant, and she'd tell them it was from her daughter, and it basically meant, Mom, you're the best. For all the beautiful jewelry she had from her mother and from a wonderful life with my dad. She wanted to keep this one close to her heart and to think of me every day as she put it on. She gave it back to me and asked me to wear it and think of her, which I have been. It was in perfect condition, of course, in spite of daily wear. Because Mom didn't need to have everything. She cherished everything she had. And everything she had, she wanted to share. She wanted us all to know in her final weeks how very grateful and satisfied she was with what she called exactly the life she wanted. Not thinking she had missed a single thing of importance because of the beautiful family she had created and the beautiful world she got to see and share. Whether it was a Tehillim group, service to the community, doing taharot when she was physically able, visiting for hours with friends who were sick, or just trying to make her daughter smile. When I was having a hard time, she found ways to make things better. She wanted everyone to see the same beauty that she saw. Mom, you have truly been a beauty in this world, never wanting the focus on yourself, as if you're merely a conduit, an instrument for the music that Hashem left for you to find and share. You showed us what we can create, what we can appreciate, and how we can love. I'm not ready to say goodbye, but I can say thank you for everything. Your beauty remains in the world, in the voices of your students, and always in my heart.
Yesterday afternoon, as we were preparing my mom's apartment for the Shiva, I came across this little sticky note on her nightstand. Written on it in Mom's handwriting are a series of 10 numbers and 5 Hebrew names. The numbers represent 10 prakim of Tehillim that Mom said every day, right up until the day she was no longer physically able. The 5 Hebrew names belong to friends or family members, or friends who feel like family members, and are relatively recent additions to Mom's Tehillim list. The people on this list were either injured, fighting on October 7th, or are currently being held hostage in Gaza. The first name on this list is Hirsch ben Perel Chana, which many of us already know is the Hebrew name for Hirsch Goldberg Poland. Today, I am devastated, both due to the tremendous loss of my mother and because Mom didn't live to see Hirsch and every other hostage return home to Israel. But today, I'm also profoundly thankful. I've had the great zchut to have had Fraydie Matkowsky, Fraydie bat Esther v'Yosef Shmuel Noble, Esther Gittel v'Yosef Shmuel Noble, as my mother. To know my mom was to love her. as everyone who knew her will attest, especially given the sharp pain of loss we all feel today. It's not an opinion, but a statement of fact. In these last weeks and months, it's been my honor and privilege to spend a great deal of time with my mom. So I've had time to think a lot about the nature of the love that children have for their mothers. In particular, I started reminiscing about the first thing I can remember loving about my mom, the person who first made me experience what it meant, what it actually felt like to be loved. So what was that first thing? With such an embarrassment of riches, how to choose? It could have been Mom's kind eyes or her genuine smile, or maybe the arms that first cradled me as a baby and hugged me as a child. Kosir vaya, my cup unquestionably runneth over. But the first thing, and indeed the most enduring thing I remember loving about my mom was her voice. Mom's voice was one of sincerity and earnestness, of empathy and optimism, of intelligence and creativity, of perseverance and devotion. Mom's was a voice of midot and chesed, of keva and kavanah, of ben adam lemakom and ben adam lechavero, of ahava, achva, shalom v'reut. And of course, Mom's was a voice of melody and harmony. Mom's voice, even when she wasn't singing, even when there were louder voices very close by, was the melody and harmony of my childhood. Mom's voice was the first to sing me to sleep. Some of my earliest memories are of Mom singing Numi Numi, the iconic Israeli lullaby, and Dona Dona, the achingly melancholy Jewish folk song. On the nights I woke up with childhood night terrors, Mom's was the voice that gently called out the sounds of cars and trucks speeding by on the New York Thruway in the distance until I was able to fall back asleep. As a 4-year-old, when I woke up at night in an Israeli hospital bed and called out for her, Mom's was the voice that answered suddenly, mysteriously, and reassuringly from below. After visiting hours, Mom left with the other families, only to sneak back into the building to sleep on the floor under my bed. An exceptional fusion of maternal love and just the right amount of chutzpah. Mom's was the voice that read my favorite children's books to me over and over, turning each dog-eared page and reading with the same warmth and enthusiasm every time, an example I tried to emulate when reading to my children decades later. I have a vivid memory of Mom reading my favorite book, Katie and the Big Snow, on a winter night in the Albany Medical Center ER waiting room. Or maybe it was St. Peter's Hospital, since Mom had to keep switching back and forth between the two lest she attract unwanted attention from the authorities for having a kid who kept showing up at the ER with cuts and bruises and the occasional toy wheel stuck up his nose. In middle school and high school, Mom's was the voice that gently corrected me without judgment when I mispronounced a word here and there, due to the mild form of dyslexia that years later I learned that Mom and I shared. As I grew into adulthood and set about building my own Bayit Ne'eman B'Yisrael, Mom's voice was the first to congratulate Andy and me on our engagement and on our becoming first-time parents, an event that made Mom a first-time bubby. Of course, Mom celebrated the arrival of each new anicle with equal bubby-esque joy and enthusiasm. Piha patcha b'chokhmah. Ever the Eshet Chayil, Mom used her voice to impart wisdom. Sometimes Mom's wisdom took the form of Torat Chesed al Lashonah. Mom's Torah was indeed Chesed, as loving kindness was her default setting. And Mom's Chesed was often Torah. In the 1980s, Mom volunteered for Shalom Sunday, where she taught Hebrew songs and Jewish rituals and customs to former Soviet Jews who were forbidden from Jewish practice behind the Iron Curtain. Mom tried to live her life according to the Torah, davening and doing mitzvot with a profound sense of humility and sincerity. Every year on her mother's, our bubby's, Yortzeit, Mom gave a Dvar Torah on the Haftarah portion at a Seudah Shlishit she hosted for her friends. Other times, Mom's wisdom took the secular form of word games with her children and grandchildren and crossword puzzles and Jeopardy with Dad. While Dad certainly earned his formidable reputation in academic circles, don't tell anyone, but Mom's voice was the voice that called out the vast majority of correct Jeopardy questions. And when Mom and Dad filled out the daily New York Times crossword puzzle at the kitchen table, Mom always helped Dad fill in those last few sticklers. Mom loved sharing her passion for music with her beloved grandchildren, even coming out of retirement to play the piano at their kindergarten graduations. And one of my favorite memories is of Mom playing Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol on the piano as part of a cherished weekly post-Havdalah freeze dance ritual with our kids. And of course, Mom was the harmonic engine that powered the trademark Zmirot harmonies we sang as a family at ours and many other Shabbat and Yom Tov tables. During these last difficult days, weeks, and months, Devorah, Dave, and I created some bittersweet new memories, as despite the technological challenges of us not all being in the same place at the same time, we were able to serenade Mom, and one recent Erev Shabbat, even sing with Mom, using the sweet harmonies she taught us and inspired us to sing. Sometimes Mom's voice came not via her vocal cords, but through the instruments she played, having found her musical voice at an impossibly young age. As a precocious 3-year-old in the late 1940s, spending summers in the country, a bungalow in the Catskills, Mom was intrigued by the piano she found on the dormant stage in the social hall, and she would often sneak behind the curtain and just start playing. Eventually, people started recognizing that they were actual songs emanating from the stage, but as soon as they peeked behind the curtain, Mom would stop playing and run away, only to return the following day. Over the years, as Mom developed and matured both her identity and personality and her musical voice, that voice would belong not only to her parents and siblings, nor to her eventual husband, children, and grandchildren, nor to her extended family, nor her many friends. We have a treasured photo of Mom at the tender age of 5, playing piano at her own kindergarten graduation. And though she'd rather have been on stage doing the special dance with her classmates when they asked her to play, she did. In 7th grade at Beis Yaakov, the school principal who usually played music at school functions became ill. So naturally, plan B was to ask 12-year-old Mom to take over all musical duties going forward. And though Mom wasn't sure she was ready for the added responsibility, she did. A couple years later, within a few months of starting high school at Central, Mom was first appointed musical director of the school musical, then director of the school musical, and finally, though still a teenager, faculty advisor of all school musicals. Since the faculty advisor at the time told her, "There's nothing I can do that you're not already doing, why don't you just take over for me?" And though Mom would rather have been on stage than off stage, she did. Last month, as we were spending time with Mom in her hospital room, she suddenly asked, "What was this group on Facebook featuring her name and photos?" I momentarily froze in terror, since Mom had somehow discovered the secret I had tried and abjectly failed to keep under wraps. We had created the group as a pick-me-up during a difficult time, as a way to show Mom the impact she's had on so many of our friends. As Hillel Torah music director, music teacher, choir director, and director of the 8th grade graduation cantata. Having taught an entire generation a compilation of songs that exuded a love of Israel and Yiddishkeit, and expressed the language of that love in Hebrew, English, Yiddish, and Ladino. I had foolishly thought we should wait to share the group with Mom until there was a critical mass of engagement, just in case we didn't get the response we'd hoped for, only to have that plan foiled by the Facebook algorithm, which decided to recommend the group to her. Well, I shouldn't have worried, because the group inspired a torrent of heartfelt appreciation and love for Mom, who was truly and deeply touched by all the lovely stories, videos, and photos. And because Mom discovered it early, she was able to have that much more time internalizing and appreciating the positive impact she made on so many lives. The Facebook group brought her a measure of joy and peace in a time that was largely lacking in both. Gam ki elech begeitz hamavet, lo irara, ki atay madi. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Tehillim Chaf Gimel, the iconic Psalm 23, is doubly meaningful to our family. First, it was the favorite of Mom's father, Arzadi, who famously sang it all the time. And it was one of the very first songs my siblings and I sang together with Mom a very few short weeks ago, and again during the last few days when we were all together. Second, these words exquisitely reflected Mom's attitude in recent weeks and months. To Mom, these were not mere words. She said them sincerely and with an acute understanding of their meaning, especially given her condition and prognosis. During her numerous ER visits, Mom often recited Tehillim Chaf Gimel to herself as she waited for the doctor or for a room to come available. And on the late January night, a CT scan revealed some particularly disheartening news. Mom and I recited Mizmor David together as she grasped my hand more tightly than usual. As Mom's health deteriorated, she used her voice to selflessly give her children the gift of letting us know that she was at peace with what was to come. While she was clearly disappointed, she said heartbreakingly that she thought she'd have more time. Mom often also said reflectively that she had lived a good life. She had a wonderful family and a group of friends, and she traveled the world and had experiences she never imagined as a child. She had no complaints and no need for a bucket list. And yes, I asked. Gam ki elech begetz hamavet lo rak imadi. Finally, of the many, many songs Mom taught us over the years, when I think of Mom's voice and the impact she's had on her family, her friends, and the community at large, the lyrics of one song in particular stand out. Hayamim chofim shana overet, aval magina tamid nisheret. The days and years pass, but the melody always remains. To which I would add, so does the harmony. Mom, you did good.
When speaking last, inevitably, some of the things I say have been said, but some details are different, as inevitably the way we hear things throughout our lives and from different sources, especially things that happened years ago, affects each of us in a unique way. And maybe between what all of us have said here and more that will be said over the coming week, it's pieces of a puzzle that together help paint a picture of who Mom was. About 2 months ago, Mom had an extended stay at Evanston Hospital, recovering from emergency surgery and complications from that surgery. During that time, I was able to come in from Cleveland to spend time with her, including a Shabbat together at the hospital. Though Mom had pain from the procedure and its aftermath, and wooziness from the painkillers, and exhaustion from everything her body had been going through, there were still significant stretches of time where these forces were sufficiently at bay to allow us to daven together, sing Zmirot, talk at length, especially about Bubby's favorite topic, her grandchildren, and to share memories. The situation we found ourselves in that Shabbat evoked one memory in particular for both of us, and we each referenced aspects of it over Shabbat. 33 years ago, when Mom's father, my Zadie Noble, was spending his final months at Beth Israel Hospital in New York, Mom came in from Chicago to spend Shabbat with him and invited me to make the subway trip down from YU to join them. There was one major difference between the two Shabbat hospital experiences. Zadie had suffered a major stroke triggered by the angiogram for which he had gone into the hospital, as a result of which he spent his remaining months, including that Shabbat, only semi-coherent and at most partially aware of his surroundings. Mom reminded me that the hospital chaplain at Beth Israel, a man with a posh British accent who had seemingly read up somewhere on how to talk to religious Jewish patients, stopped by Shabbat morning and inquired of Zadie, I'm not going to do the accent, can you tell me what portion of the Pentateuch the men are chanting in temple this morning? In response to which he got a blank stare. and concluded while making his exit that Zadie must not be familiar with the Sabbath morning service. The truth is that Zadie, who had emigrated from a Galiciana shtetl after World War I, and for whom his Yiddish-inflected English remained a second language throughout his life, would not likely have understood what the chaplain was trying to say, even without having suffered a stroke. Yet, moments before the chaplain's visit, as I laned the Parsha from a Chumash, Zadie was regularly finishing the psukim from memory. That last bit about finishing psukim is the part I referenced to Mom during our Shabbat in Evanston. I actually remembered more from that long ago Shabbat that I kept to myself. But I want to share it now because of what it says about the type of person Mom was, her character, her values and priorities throughout her life. Here's what I didn't remind Mom during our Shabbat in Evanston about that Shabbat at Beth Israel. Although Zadie's brain had remained hardwired with Torah, his memory for people and events from his life was less sure-footed. Mom continued over that Shabbat to bring up significant family memories and milestones, and I chimed in where I could, but we weren't certain what Zadie understood, let alone related to as his own life experiences. Mom's focus was on soothing and caring for her father and sharing stories in case on some level they still held meaning for him. When his meal arrived, she fed him with a spoon and he ate appreciatively, but he was not able to keep it down. By then, his beard had grown long and white, and his youngest child cleaned it with tenderness, an expression of reflecting and reciprocating some of the love and caring that he had given her all those years, and reaffirming as an adult the unique and enduring bond of the parent-child relationship. And when she was done tending to him, as he had once tended to her, he thanked her and asked, "What do I call you?" Had he forgotten her name? She would remind him. "Fraydie," she said. You call me Fraydie." "And your name is?" he persisted. My heart broke a little in that moment, but if Mom's did, and how could it not? She somehow subordinated her feelings to the task of caring for her beloved father, whether or not he was still aware of their relationship. It is hard to imagine the inner strength it took for her to remain laser-focused on Zadie's needs throughout that experience. Hard to imagine unless you knew my mom. Somehow, she was always able to focus on the higher goal, on the long game, on the health of the relationship, over and above her immediate preferences or momentary, even if deeply hurt feelings. So much so that in recalling that shared memory, she seems to have edited out the painful parts and remembered only that which was relationship affirming or amusing in the case of the well-meaning but clueless chaplain. Mom's memory suited and affirmed her cherished relationship with her father, glossing over the hurt she had consciously set aside at the time and whose significance had faded with each passing moment. And I dared not break that spell. I feel blessed that Mom remained lucid during our Shabbat together and for most of her remaining time thereafter, and that she regularly initiated and reciprocated words of love, saying how much she loved each of us and each of her grandchildren, and how proud she was of each one. Till the end, she was leading by example. Mom was the youngest of 4 children, though she rarely used her position as the baby of the family to her advantage. I remember one exception that Mom shared with us a number of times. Her closest sibling in both age and temperament was, and still is, her brother, my uncle, Itchy, Harav Yitzhak Noble, who is renowned as an accomplished lamdan and mechanech, as well as a chronicler of the lives of Gedolim from previous generations. But as a boy, Itchy was better known for his love of basketball. He was a big fan of the New York Knicks and its star of the time, Nat Sweetwater Clifton. And whenever a Knicks game was on TV, Itchy would try to watch. As it happened, some nights the game broadcast conflicted with a show that Mom enjoyed, Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows. On those occasions, a typical childhood argument among siblings in a one-TV household would ensue, at which point Mom would suddenly stop arguing, switch to her sweetest little girl voice, and call to her mother in the bedroom, "Mama, you'll never guess what's on TV now. It's your favorite show." "Sid Caesar's on," would come the reply. "I'll be right there." "But Mama," Itchy would plead, "it's the Knicks, Sweetwater Clifton." To no avail. That episode, which Mom always retold with some embarrassment and regret, was an exception that proves the rule. Mom was anything but spoiled growing up, focusing on others' needs to a fault and sometimes to her own detriment. As a young teenager, she found herself in the position of looking after her older sister, who was beset with illness. Though Mom was a diligent student who ordinarily earned high grades, at one point during high school, she had missed so many school days to stay home and tend to her sister's needs that the school notified her she was at risk of failing several courses. Mom had to be reminded, in this case dramatically, to take care of her own needs too. Her instinct was to put others first. On a much smaller and personally embarrassing scale, Mom liked to remind me about a time when, as a toddler, I requested a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch. I was a finicky eater, and that week I could only tolerate creamy peanut butter. But all we had in the house was crunchy, a relic of my unyielding preferences from a prior week. So Mom painstakingly removed the crunchy bits of peanut from the peanut butter that she had spread on the sandwich, as I looked on anxiously to make sure she hadn't missed any. In retelling this story, Mom was self-deprecating, focusing on how naive she was as a young mother. But for me, it was always a story of how much she cared and how much her core nature was to make others comfortable and happy. Mom's name, Fraydie, is Yiddish for joy. And from the youngest age, she used her energies and talents to bring joy to others, most notably through music and art. Bubby Noble loved to brag about her youngest child's musical talent, which was evident from a very tender age. One story that Bubby told many times was set in the country, which is how she referred to the Catskill Mountains, either in the bungalow colony in which they spent several summers, or possibly at a convention for one of the Jewish organizations that they supported. As the story goes, after Havdalah on Motzei Shabbat, little Fraydie went over to the piano in the dining hall and started to play the tunes of the Zmirot that were sung over Shabbat. People gathered around to hear her play, this little girl who had never taken a lesson and was just playing by ear and from memory. Mom was 3 years old at the time. In grade school, at the Esther Schoenfeld Beis Yaakov of the Lower East Side, Mom was responsible for student music and art productions. The school, which my grandparents had helped establish and support, was a wonderful environment for frumkeit and for Mom's artistic expression, but it was not academically challenging for her. Mom followed the lead of her best friend, Estelle Breyer, in leaving the school after 8th grade and enrolling in YU's Central High School for Girls, where she continued to develop her artistic talent alongside a more rigorous curriculum. Words sometimes make things seem easier than they actually were. It was no simple task to break family tradition and leave the Beis Yaakov her parents had invested so much in, thinking it would benefit their own children as well as many others in the community. Mom's inner strength and focus on long-term goals were essential to persuade her parents of the need for the switch, and to do so without compromising her commitment both to the mitzvah of kibud av v'em and to maintaining her loving relationship with her parents. But there was an additional hurdle. The principal of Central at that time was an Aguda-affiliated rabbi who knew my grandparents in that context. He saw it as his duty to dissuade Mom from transferring from Beis Yaakov to the more modern school that he headed. At her admissions interview, instead of the standard interview question, "Why do you think you'd be a good fit for our school?" the principal advised Mom, "This is not the right school for you." But she would not be deterred in her pursuit of excellence in both Jewish and secular education, making her case while maintaining throughout appropriate kavod harav. Mom's commitment to education remained a core value throughout her life, in raising her children, in taking continuing ed classes at Northwestern, and participating in shiurim and lectures for as long as her health allowed. Mom enjoyed Rabbi Engel's erudite drashot every Shabbat, and as Rabbi Engel mentioned to us yesterday, both my parents were enthusiastic participants in the Or Torah snowbird learning in Boca. Mom had a special affinity for the annual Torah and Science lectures in memory of Cy Greenfield. And in her final years, Mom felt blessed to participate in a weekly Zoom shiur by Rabbi Well for first-generation Or Torahniks. For a number of years, Mom took great pride and satisfaction in preparing and sharing shiurim on Megillat Esther in honor of her mother, Esther Gittel's yahrzeit. Combining her interests in music and education began during Mom's teenage years, when she served as the music director in several summer camps. Then in college, initially at Brooklyn College, and later, after a couple kids, at SUNY Albany, Mom majored in music. One course she told us about was acoustics, which was taught by an iconoclastic European professor. Though there were only 15 students in the class, it was held in the school's main concert hall. As the subject got more technical, students started dropping out one by one. But Mom had the benefit of a groom who happened to be a rising professor of mathematics. Each evening after dinner, Dad reviewed Mom's lecture notes and explained the mathematical principles undergirding acoustic theory in plain English. The next day, Mom would show up prepared to discuss the material, to the amazement of her remaining befuddled classmates. Eventually, Mom was the only student in the class, which was nevertheless still held in the concert hall. Mom brought her knowledge of music theory, her love of Jewish songs, as well as classical and folk music, to her work as an accompanist for performers including cantor Alberto Mizrahi, to playing piano at community events, such as Hillel Torah nursery and kindergarten graduations, and especially to her role as Hillel Torah's music teacher, cantata leader for 8th grade graduation, and as founding director of the Hillel Torah Choir. The choir, under Mom's direction, became a staple not only of the school calendar, including being featured at the school's annual dinner, but also of Chicago area Jewish life. Over the years, the choir performed for many local organizations, at times sharing the stage with visiting Israeli artists such as Ron Eliran and Naomi Shemer. One time, a visit to Chicago by Bubby and Zadie Noble coincided with a choir performance. Mom was thrilled to finally be able to share this part of her life with her parents, to give them nachas in seeing how her childhood musical talent that they had nurtured had blossomed and developed. As luck would have it, this particular concert, with Mom's parents in the audience front row center, was the one where a student in the choir fainted from the heat and fell with a loud thud on the stage, prompting a student behind her to shout something frightening and inappropriate. Not the impression Mom wanted her parents to have of a typical choir performance. But I suspect that they saw through the commotion of those few minutes to recognize the joy of the kids performing Jewish songs in harmony, the joy of the audience in clapping along, and the joy that was their daughter, Fraydie, whose name means joy, making the music and the magic happen. Mom, so many people have been blessed by your giving nature, your willingness to stand up for your values, your quiet charisma, your desire to help others succeed, and your generosity in sharing your brachot from Hashem, and chief among them, your joy in music. We are not ready, I am not ready, to let you go. There are so many more songs to sing, harmonies to improvise, lessons to learn, books to read, divrei Torah to share, ideas to ponder, games to play, trips to take, groan-inducing puns to subject each other to, and conversations to have about everything and nothing. May Hashem give me and give all of us the strength to learn from your strength, the ability to focus, as you always did, on overarching goals and underlying values, and the wisdom to apply your wisdom of prioritizing cherished relationships and seeking ways to share joy with others. And may your music in all its forms remain alive within us. Tehei nishmata tzura b'tzora chayim, yehi zichra baruch.
Mindful of the time and knowing that it's Erev Shabbos, we still have the mitzvah of Levaya to perform. I just want to share a couple of personal reflections of my own. I'll be brief. At Bernie's, I don't remember now if it was the Levaya or the Akamat Matseva, I reflected on the fact that Bernie, Zichrono Livracha, was constantly, whenever I would visit with him in the hospital, at home, we would always say Tehillim Perek Lamed together, Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit David. He loved this chapter, about calling out to Hashem, Hashem healing him. And so I remember that I said at that time, something to the effect of, Bernie was the man who wrote the lyrics, but Fraydie was always the music. And what you hear today from family and friends is just exactly that point. Mizmor Shir, Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. They were Minam Yazdim, among the founders of the shul from the founding generation. Just 3 weeks ago, I was visiting the apartment. Fraydie, she brought up the story again about somebody coming back from Israel and saying to her and to Bernie, "Oh, I was in this yeshiva in such a place, maybe in Eli or something. Oh, there's a plaque there that you gave money to help found, the yeshiva." And she reminded me that Bernie would say back, "In that yeshiva? We're in every yeshiva. We're in every yeshuv." These were people who loved Eretz Yisrael. And I wasn't surprised to hear that the Tehillim, the 10 Pirkei Tehillim, are all about davening for chatufim, for injured people. Not a surprise. I'll also share with you that I was zocheh to have Fraydie come to many of my shiurim over the years. She always asked very sharp questions, but she was always nice about it. And she always came to shul. Ingrained in my mind right now, it's just a few weeks ago, she came to shul, dressed beautifully as ever, and after shul ended, I was filing out of the main shul, the main minyan. She came into the men's section, and she shared with me this crushing news about the fact that things hadn't gone well, and she didn't know how much time she had left. And that's when she was repeating to me, she said it 3-4 times in a 2-minute conversation. She's so grateful for everything Hashem has given her in life. For her family, for the community, for her beloved late husband. You see that greatness of a person coming to the foreground, just even in a short conversation, these short snippets of time. And it occurs to me that that indeed from that chapter, that 30th chapter of Tehillim, the last pasuk in that in Perek Lamed is exactly the pasuk that would always finish the kapitel, that Bernie would always recite with me. And it's about music and about having a neshama. L'man yizamercha chavod v'lo yidom Hashem Elokai le'olam odeka, so that my soul may make music to you and not be stilled. Hashem, my God, I will be forever grateful. Le'olam odeka. As we offer our condolences to Rabbi Naftali and Esther Razel Noble, Dina Noble, Rav Yitzchak and Sarah Noble, the members of the family who are here, to the grandchildren, Nathaniel and Kobe and Mia and Dina and Josh and Joey, to David and Lisa, Daniel and Andrea and Devorah. We think about the beautiful legacy that belongs to this grand soul, Fraydie bat Yosef Shmuel and Esther Gittel. And as we move now to the recitation of the Kelmole, which David will lead for us, let's have in mind a little bit, what does it mean that we're, all of us as a community, suffering a great loss today, but also we will recall this great spiritual legacy of this wonderful, wonderful person. Tehei nishmata tzurura b'tzora chayim. Please rise now for the recitation of the Kelmole. You have it? Okay.
El malei rachamim sholchein b'maromim hametzei menucha nechona al kanfei hashechina b'ma'alot Kedoshim utehorim, kizohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Fraydie bat Yosef Shmuel ve'Esther Gittel shehalcha le'olama. Bavur shenodvim tzedakah be'ad hazkarat nishmata began Eden tehei menuchata lachein ba'al harachamim yastireha b'seiter knafav le'olamim Vitzror hachayim et nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach al mishkava b'shalom v'nomar amen.
This concludes the funeral here at the chapel. The interment will take place at Waldheim Cemetery. For those who will be joining the family procession, we'll be lining up in the parking lot. We'll be placing a magnetic flag on your vehicle, and we ask that you have your hazard and headlights on while in procession, and drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you. The family will be sitting Shiva at 9201 Drake, apartment 106, where there will be their day leave from 9 until 9 p.m., except for meal times. And then Friday, Mincha will be at 3:10 p.m., Sunday, Shachris is at 8 a.m., Monday to Thursday, Shachris is at 7 a.m. And the Shiva concludes next Thursday morning. The following individuals have been asked to act as pallbearers: Josh, Nathaniel, and Kobe Matkowsky, and Avram Chaim Noble. If we can all rise as we escort the caskets from the chapel. Once we've left the chapel, we ask everybody to go immediately to your vehicles, as we want to get to the cemetery in a timely manner. So please do not stop and congregate in the lobby, especially if you're going to the cemetery. Go immediately to your cars.